Returning once again to St. Mark's Gospel, we hear, "And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, come to him, saying, Master, we desire that whatsoever we shall ask, thou wouldest do it for us. And he said to them, What would you that I should do for you? And they said, Grant to us that we may sit one on thy right hand, and the other on thy left hand, in thy glory. And Jesus said to them, You know not what you ask. Can you drink of the chalice that I drink of, or be baptized with the baptism wherewith I am baptized? And they said to him, We can. And Jesus saith to them, You shall indeed drink of the chalice that I drink of, and with the baptism wherewith I am baptized you shall be baptized. But to sit on my right hand or on my left is not mine to give to you, but to them for whom it is prepared. And the 10, hearing it, began to be much displeased at James and John. But Jesus, calling them, saith to them, You know that they who seem to rule over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their princes have power over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever will be greater shall be your minister, and whoever will be first among you shall be the servant of all. For the Son of Man also is not come to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give his life a redemption for many." And from the Psalms, King David, we always pray in the Psalms in our breviary, "I rejoiced at the things that were said to me, we shall go into the house of the Lord." So tonight we need to look at, and the third secret of how the religious are going up together. It's not just one religious, it's a group of men and women religious. So tonight we need to talk about that grouping, that community life, fraternal life in common. This is an essential element of the religious life. I find it very interesting, and by no means am I making any definite conclusions here, but just a study of religious life, you find that it held its ground pretty well up until World War II. World War II, Our Lady warned us, would be a chastisement. I don't think it was just a chastisement on the physical level, people dying, countries being blown up, buildings, cities being lost, things like that. I think it's much, much more. On every level, you can trace things back to that time, and there was a shift. Something went wrong. I'm listening to the book by Whittaker Chambers, Witness, again. As a community, we're listening to it, and it is truly a fascinating book. Whittaker Chambers is a convert from communism, a true convert. In other words, he understood the evil of communism. And he says World War I was so that communism could take place on a national level, Russia. He says World War II is so communism could take place on a global level. Wow, pretty scary. Well, I just want to mention that because if you study religious life, there was these efforts to try to peel away parts of religious life. Let's just have one thing. Can't we just have the vow of this or the vow of that? Or, so then you get all these different groupings, these apostolic life, the apostolic fraternity. Like the fraternity of St. Peter is a fraternal society of priests. This was unheard of before 1940s. It was either religious or you were canons regular or something. There was none of this. It's not traditional, basically, to have a couple of the vows, but not all of them. I mention this because fraternal life was one of the things that really suffered through this. Religious life today is one of the biggest things that has suffered is fraternal life in common. It wasn't long before religious started to go off on their own, live in apartments and things like that. And the Vatican put out a couple of documents, even one is called Fraternal Life in Common, and laments the situation in which we find ourselves. It's actually illegal for a religious to live outside of the community for more than a year at a time. Every single year, a religious has to be reassigned to a place where he's outside of the common life of the community, because this is not religious life. An essential element is that common life. We live together. We're not going to become saints without each other. We got to rub on each other. And if I'm sitting in an apartment or off living by myself, no one's going to be rubbing on me, and I've lost my vocation as a religious. So that's very dangerous, and the canon law is saying that. You have to reevaluate every single year, why is this religious living on his own? So in The Secret, it's showing if we want to climb, we need to climb together. We need to go as a community. And those who love community life, when they leave it, like say I came to give you a retreat and I come home, and we're always relieved to come home. Oh, it's so nice to be back. And you just fit right into community life and things go well. You feel at home. That's good. That's the way it should be. St. Paul of the Cross was so zealous about this need for community life that he would have, I believe that St. Paul of the Cross, the Passionist, so he would have you read the rule in its entirety, take a little retreat before leaving to go give a mission or whatever you're going to do. And when you came back, you took another retreat and you reread it again. He wanted to make sure you knew what you were about before you left and what you were about when you came back. That's very interesting. He would not let you come back into the community without retreating, getting reassociated with your whole life, your duties, what it is that you're about. So we're saved together. We're saved as a body. A religious community is a church in miniature. It's a church in miniature. When you look at the church, we look at our goal. We're to be heavenly beings. The religious is to be a heavenly being. The religious is the closest example of a heavenly being you can find on earth. So how is that? We may not be very heavenly, but at least we're doing heavenly things, and on the outside it seems we're doing something unusual and we're on our way. So in heaven they wear robes. We wear robes. In heaven they don't eat, so we fast. We don't eat all the things. We eat less than normal people usually. We don't eat between meals, that kind of stuff. We're always fighting ourselves. So a religious has a regular regime of fasting. And then in heaven, they don't sleep. So religious get up. We get up in the morning, pray. We're praying early in the morning or late at night, depending on your religious community. And in heaven, they don't give and take in marriage. Thus, we have a vow of chastity. We are practicing for heaven. Why do we fast? Practicing for heaven. Why do we get up in the morning, early or late at night, get back up again? We're practicing for heaven because they don't sleep in heaven. They pray all the time in heaven. So we're praying throughout the day, imitating heaven. We are to be heavenly beings. And in heaven, they live in concord. In heaven, there's a floor. You ever notice that in the Bible? There's a floor to heaven. And it's crystal clear and beautiful and gold. What about hell? It's bottomless. There is no floor. What's the floor? It's charity. I would hold this for our meditation tonight. It's charity. We want to walk to heaven. We want to walk in heaven. We want to be able to have something to walk on. We need that, and that's charity. If you're going to be in heaven and not fall through the floor, you're going to have to have charity to be there. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why we look to Our Lady, because she has the strongest foothold in heaven, being the most full of charity. But now let's look at St. Thomas Aquinas. He says that charity is a friendship. Charity is a friendship. So it's the love of friendship. It's not a love of utility. I don't just live in community because it helps get the job done better. It's the love of friendship. The job comes second. The apostolate is second. This is where many communities go wrong. They treat their apostolate more important than their members. You come first. Your soul is more important than what we do. Love of friendship. And that love of friendship, if you study friendship, it's a relation. using the categories of Aristotle. And in a relation, you have to have a fundament, something on which the friendship is based. Now, you can take some silly examples. Let's say you're living in the world and you notice this person's really good at playing tennis. And you like playing tennis too. Well, you get together and you play tennis. So your friendship begins by being based on tennis playing. That's the fundament of your friendship. And as you get to know each other, it starts to change, maybe to something more deep. Or you realize this person's pretty flimsy. I can't be friends with them. Ultimately, the friendship needs to be based on grace. God dwelling in you and God dwelling in me. And it's as if Jesus is talking to Jesus when I talk to you. I've had that many times on a plane or in the public. You're out there and you meet a stranger that's a true faithful Catholic. And it's really amazing how all of a sudden you just feel right at home with each other and we're able to discuss anything. And you realize, what just happened? It was Jesus talking to Jesus. And that beautiful fundament that we share allows us to be heavenly beings already in this world. That's the floor of heaven. It's the fundament. We have it, sisters. It's right here. We should always turn back and find our way back to that floor and find our footing if we have a disagreement. Something goes wrong. We need to go, wait a minute. We're on the same sheet of paper. We're on the same floor, the floor of charity. If we're going to make it to heaven, let's get back to the fundament. It's the foundation on which to rebuild the human race, a fallen race. I mean, you could think to yourself, when arguing and discussing things, you can sometimes use the phrase, there's no foundation for that position. That same idea ought to hold in our relationships. Wait a minute, there's no foundation for that. What is our foundation? Charity. So maybe there's some disagreement or some inordinate thing between people that happens. We have to say, whoa, that's not the foundation. It's got to be charity. Love of friendship. Jesus talking and working with Jesus. So if we want to walk in heaven together, then we have to start walking together now. And the floor that we walk on is charity. And I think that, as we said earlier, you get the graces you need to thrive in this time of wrath. Maybe not, become that great saint that we read about. That'll happen. But the way we do it is doing our duties of our state in life. All of us have our duties, our prayer. We have our duties in keep the community operating smoothly, sacristans, cooks, everything. We do our duties, that's our penance. We do it well, everything falls into place. It's often the disagreements in community come because someone is not doing their duty well. And we get disgruntled that I have to do it. So keep that penance firmly in mind, because that's what's going to keep us united. By doing our duties well, we won't have that problem. That's where the grace is. That's where the foundation is going to work well, because the grace that's given to us is to keep charity alive and working. I'll just read this from the communications department again, from this book, The Review for Religious. I got a kick out of it, to be honest. I'm not sure you will. I was in religious life as a chaplain for 4.5 years for Carmelites, and I have to agree with some of this. The sister was writing in, Reverend Fathers, by all means, let us have short, unread, I'm not sure I could do that, interesting conferences reiterating the fundamental truths. And do please include the mysticism of the church. Then she puts in parentheses, may I remind your correspondent that the canonization rosters of the church list more feminine than masculine exponents of mysticism. Teresa of Jesus, Catherine of Siena, Saint Scholastica, Saint Gertrude. But I have yet to meet a sincere sister who is mystified. I don't know quite what she means by that, but I think she's right. In other words, what I've seen a lot happen is these retreats to sisters. It's kind of fun talking about mysticism. You can go to St. John of the Cross, a living flame, and all those things, and wow, whoo, neato. You know what though? That doesn't help us live a religious life. And they just go on after the retreat's over as if it never happened. I think that's a mistake. And that's why I'm always trying to give you more practical, somewhat maybe pressing things that may hurt a little. Here's what she says. Now this is the funny part, I thought. But must the banes of religious life always be disregarded? Of course, no one wants to talk about the banes of religious life. What are they? For instance, espionage. It happens. I mean, tale-bearing, prying curiosity, coupled with gossiping, which makes community life unbearable. I mean, the espionage thing really hit home with me. I'm like, wow, wish our retreat masters had talked about that. Everybody would have been squirming. Envy, jealousy, ambition for power, with reluctance to give it up and return to the ranks. The responsibility to keep promises. The types of secrets, which is a little bit more tricky, but she's right. When you're in religious life, one of the most hurtful things that can happen to you is that you've spoken something in secret and it got around, or it was used against you when the person said they would not do that. So this is one of the crosses of religious life. She's right. The types of secrets and the sacredness of confidential and professional information. That's pretty important. She's right. This is something that is touching deeply on community life and really should be addressed. I don't know if I'm going to be able to address those things, but I just find that interesting that here's the religious saying, please, would you address these more practical issues that do what? That deeply affect how we live our life in common. We need to pay attention to that. If we're going to climb, we've got to climb together. So rules for religious, keep them of one heart and one mind. What's your unifying element? It's not just the grace of Christ, which we all share, hopefully, in common. It's that you're united around this founder, around this rule. This is what makes you who you are. This is the specific difference of this community versus a Dominican or a Carmelite. This is the rule. Saints and whole communities have been perfected by this rule. Europe has been converted by this rule. It's powerful. How come it's not working with me? We have to ask that. What did I do wrong? Turn to Abba Dorotheus. He was, I think, one of the Sinai fathers. I can't remember exactly all the details, but he's a pretty interesting desert father. And he says, back to the climbing the mountain together, and almost all of them say this, almost all the desert fathers in so many ways say this, but I thought Abba Dorotheus says it pretty well, and I thought I'd repeat it to what he said. The idea of leading yourself, the idea of going it alone, the idea that, well, this community's kind of shot, but I'll do it. And there's some truth to that. Sometimes that has to happen. St. Therese, I think, says more or less you have to follow the rule even when no one else is doing it. We have to follow the rule. But you're in a community. We can't neglect that. We can't neglect that fraternal life in common. Here's what he says. The wise Solomon says in the Proverbs, "They that have no guidance fall like leaves, but in much counsel there is safety." So you see that what the Holy Scriptures teach us. They enjoin us not to rely on ourselves, not to regard ourselves as knowing all, not to believe that we can control ourselves. For we need help. We are in need of those who would counsel us according to God. No men are more unfortunate or nearer perdition than those who have no teachers on the way of God. For what does it mean that where no guidance is, the people fall like leaves? A leaf is at first green, it's flourishing and beautiful. Then it gradually withers, falls, and is finally trampled underfoot. So it is with a man who has no guide. At first he is always zealous in fasting, vigil, silence, obedience, and other virtues. Then his zeal, little by little, cools down, and having no one to instruct, support, and fire him with zeal, he insensibly withers, falls, and finally becomes a slave of the enemies, who do with him what they will. In another place he adds, when we do not reveal our thoughts and intentions and do not seek the counsel of the experienced, we hold on to our own will and follow our own justifications or rationalizations. Then, apparently doing something good, we spread nets for ourselves, and so without realizing it, we perish. For how can we understand the will of God or completely surrender ourselves to it when we trust ourselves and cling to our own will? Therefore, Abba Piman said that our will is a brass wall between man and God. And in another place he says, the enemy likes those who rely on their own understanding. Now, that's really comical in a way, ironic. So, the Enlightenment, 1700s, 1600s, 1700s, what was the motto? Kant put it in words. He says, the motto of the Enlightenment is to have the courage to use your own understanding. That's the motto of the Enlightenment. I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. That's superstition. I'll lead myself. I've got what it takes to do it. Well, the enemy likes those who rely on their own understanding, for they help him and set traps for themselves. They help the devil and they set traps for themselves. I know of no other way for a monk to fall than when he trusts his own heart. Some say a man falls because of this or that, but I know of no other fall except when a man follows his own lead. If you see a man fallen, know that he followed his own lead. Nothing is more dangerous, nothing more pernicious than this. So in Scupali's the spiritual combat, the first chapter is trust not thyself. I mean, you almost want to be pulled into the superior's office and chewed out once in a while because you shouldn't trust yourself. You need to be guided. I almost want to beg, Father, please show me what I'm doing wrong. I want to know. It's good to hear from someone else. Now, in religious life, we should also realize we can categorize the problems we generally find in three crosses. I think this is from Cardinal Bacci. He put it in a meditation in the 1960s. He's one of those good cardinals during the 1960s in Cardinal Journet and a couple other ones. Okay, but he said they can be categorized in three general crosses in life. One, physical suffering. You know, we get ill, we're tired, we're weak, we fall apart, we're on our bed of pain. That's the first cross. Second cross, miscommunication among our fellow men. Aha, that's a big cross for religious. Miscommunication among our fellow men. And the third cross, temptations of the devil. Temptations. We all suffer from them, and they're for our own good. God's trying to bring about a virtue. So we are going to find the cross here. It's right here. It's among our fellow sisters who love God, who have grace in their souls, who are walking on the floor of charity, and yet you put two saints together and they will make each other suffer. Okay? This is normal. This is the cross. One of the ways we can understand this cross is simply this, using St. Thomas Aquinas. Things are received according to the mode of the receiver. We all understand this. It's fancy wording. Things are received according to the mode of the receiver. Well, if the body is sick, things don't taste right. We could give you your favorite food, the most delightfully made food available, and your favorite dish, and you taste it, and you're sick. Ugh, don't taste like much. Because the mode of the receiver is sick. The tongue is ill. It's not feeling well. So if the soul is sick, under temptation, maybe they got a letter from home, they're laboring under a miscommunication, what's going to happen? Even good words, even kind words are going to be misunderstood. I know why you said that. That kind of thing. Put two saints together and they'll make each other suffer. Things are received according to the mode of the receiver. Now the devil sees this, the mode of the receiver, that you're laboring under a cloud, maybe he's helped concoct, and he's going to bring about some more, he's going to try to, storm on it some more, bring some more lightning and thunder in there or whatever. And the result is that useless enmities are born. In any religious community, there will be crosses and defections. Now, just applying that same idea, mode of the receiver, to the Eucharist. See, isn't that interesting? When you can't taste because you're sick, the food that you love so much tastes bland. Remember in the desert when they received the manna, that we're sick of this plain food. Yet the Bible says in another place in wisdom, the food would become anything they wanted, any delight they enjoyed. And yet they were like, we're sick of this. And then that's when the snakes came and started to bite them. And they needed the cross to be rescued from it. The bronze serpent, which is the cross. To overcome ourselves, we have to fix that mode of the receiver, and things will be judged and fairly, and food, especially the Eucharist, will again taste good and be the delight of our life. So this is not easy. What's the mode? What caused it? Well, let's think about a couple of things. First of all, I just want to get back to Abba Dorotheus. He talks about the importance of loving our neighbor. So we should be motivated to overcome that mode and fix the relationships in our midst. He says, imagine a circle with its center and radii, or rays going out from the center. So you got a circle and you got radii going out. And he says, the further these radii are from the center, the more widely they are dispersed and separated from one another. And conversely, the closer they come to the center, the closer they are to one another. Suppose now that this circle is the world, the very center of the circle, God. And the lines, the radii, going from the center to the circumference, or from the circumference to the center, are the paths of men's lives. So you can think of two sisters. They're each on a radii, and they're aiming at heaven to be with God face to face in the center. Then here we see the same. Insofar as the saints move inwards, within the circle towards its center, wishing to come near to God, then in the degree of their penetration, they come closer both to God and to one another. You see, because as the radii get closer to the middle, they get closer to each other until they touch in the middle. So moreover, inasmuch as they come near to God, they come near to one another, and as much as they come near to one another, they come near to God. That's almost directly out of St. Teresa as well. She says, the more we love our neighbor, the more we love God. The more we love God, the more we'll love our neighbor. It is the same with drawing away. When they draw away from God and turn towards external things, it is clear that in the degree that they recede from the central point and draw away from God, they withdraw from one another. And as they withdraw from one another, so they draw away from God. Such is also the property of love. Inasmuch as we are outside and do not love God, so each is far from his neighbor. But if we love God, inasmuch as we come near to him by love of him, so we become united by love with our neighbors. And inasmuch as we are united with our neighbors, so we become united with God. So he's showing the beautiful, intimate connection between those two commandments, love of God and love of neighbor. You make the cross. Vertical, love of God, horizontal, love of neighbor. You've got to have both together, and you've got your cross. St. Teresa says, if you want to improve your prayer, humiliate yourself, detach, and learn to love your neighbor. These three together will make you climb the mountain more rapidly and readily. Now, for the rest of our time, I would like to go through some responses we could make to some negativity we may experience in community life. So I think this is how to fix that mode. This is one just way of perhaps looking at it. How can we fix the mode of the receiver? Someone suffering under a negativity. Put a blank word or a general word over it. Person suffering from a negativity. So what do we do? Someone's complaining to us. It's coming out. What do we do? How do we respond? I know our Lord, He responded to the negativity expressed against Mary Magdalene. So it's a good effort to try to learn how to do the same. Remember, in Simon the leper's house, Simon is held to be Lazarus by many. And Simon was even thinking in his heart, in his mind, if he only knew what kind of woman this was. And he responded to him. He wouldn't even let it come out. He responded to him inside. And the saints did that too. Mary Magdalene de Pazzi knew the thoughts of her sisters. Gerard Magella, he knew the thoughts of his brothers. Now the saints sometimes could read the souls of their fellow religious, and they would help them. So let's go through. I have here 8 possible responses that we could give to someone who's suffering under a negativity. First of all, you should tell them the good you have experienced here or under this rule in this community. So we say something like, I'm sorry you're having a problem, but it sure has helped me. And then you list some ways that it's helped you. How you've overcome some fault by living here. That you've received graces in prayer ever since you've been here. You know that this is a good place. You know, God's graced you. Grow in virtue. These are ways to combat negativity that we may hear, that we all are capable of giving out. St. John Climacus says this, if we wish to preserve unshaken faith in our superiors, because oftentimes they're the ones we have the most trouble with, we must write their good deeds indelibly in our hearts and preserve them in our memories, so that when the demons scatter distrust of them among us, listen to his words, there's not just our fellow sisters we're dealing with, there are demons. They're trying to get us. We can repel them by what we have retained in our minds. When the thought strikes you to judge or condemn your superior, leap away as though from fornication, he says. Give no trust, no place, no entry or starting point to that snake. Say to this viper, listen to me, deceiver. I have no right to pass judgment on my superior, but he has the authority to be my judge. I do not judge him, he judges me. So you tell the person the good you've experienced under the care of the superior, or under the goodness of this community, all the good you've received. Yes, there's these problems maybe, but you know what? I've received so many good things. I'm sticking around and we're going to work at it. Number 2, expose the uncertainty of their position. I know many times I catch myself stating something too strongly. Imagine that. When challenged a little, I have to pull back and re-examine the facts to make sure I'm telling it correctly. One way I do this is to simply say to someone else, I'm not sure about that which you speak, but I can say that what they are doing seems fruitful to me, and then list the fruits. We have lots of vocations. We're wearing the habit. We're praying the office, etc. So I'm not sure about that which you speak. I don't know. But I do know there's a lot of fruit here. And you list the fruits. Now, if it happens, and this does happen, I hope it doesn't happen here, but it happens that persons can claim to have mystical knowledge about some situation. If that happens, because that's usually one of the most difficult situations to deal with, because they've been enlightened from above, and who are we to question them? Well, then you have to say to them, have you submitted this mystical experience to the church? To a confessor or spiritual director? As all the saints themselves did and advised to do. If not, you should challenge them to do so before acting upon it and speaking openly about it. expose the uncertainty of their position. It's a dangerous thing, believe me. It hurts a lot of people. Those mystics have hurt a lot of people. I'm putting quotes around them. Because they aren't going to be guided by anybody. I've got a grace from above. I know more than all you. Run. 3. My father taught me this one. It's a good one. Boy, he got me a couple of times. Who are you trying to convince? Me or you? So in other words, when he was asking me that rhetorical question, he was pointing out that I was arguing my case too much. And it wasn't very convincing. Who are you trying to convince? Me or you? Come on, you're just justifying yourself. You're rationalizing. I have found this to be true with most of those who spread negativity. If they were convincing, they would have approached the superiors immediately long ago. Thus, keep that in mind. Who are you trying to convince, me or you? Number 4. Here's an old one, but a good one, and it really is pertinent to religious life. Were you there? How many of us have it in our heads right now what we would do if only we were in charge? Now, if I'm made superior, I'm going to do these things. You'll see. But once a person is put on top and sees the view from a higher position and receives the graces of office, suddenly they become more hesitant, more introspective, more, last week I had it all figured out. Now that I'm elected and I'm in position, maybe I should rethink that. It's not quite what I thought. Things are not always as they seem. Superiors may be balancing more things than may appear from our positions. They're higher up than we are. They see more. This is a good time to challenge the person to go to the superior to solve the issue directly. So a good response is, were you there? Are you receiving the graces they're receiving? Can you see what they're seeing? No is the answer. Then be patient and you'll be made superior. It's true. Number 5. Related to this one is, who died and left you in charge? That's a good one, but it's hard to say, I know. I know this is not exactly an easy thing to say to someone, but depending on how well you know them, it might be fitting and it might be needed. Now, why should we say this phrase? Because someone, with a capital S, did die and did leave someone in charge. His name is Jesus Christ. As the gospel indicates, he did indeed give power and authority to men. He who hears you hears me, says the Lord. Thus, in order to help someone get back in line and start anew up the mountain to engage in the real battle, it helps to point out who the authorized captains are, who the generals are, and they're not us. It helps to keep in mind that God's ways are not ours. Religious life is to get you to heaven, not to have efficiency. People with their business minds come into religious life, they can't figure out why you're doing anything. I met this one awesome priest. He left I think it was Redemptors or something. He says, I left religious life. He said, they're so inefficient. He says, all these people have all these talents and never use them for those talents. They send them over there to do this. No, it's to get that person to heaven, not to use his talents. You can use his talents, don't get me wrong. But, sometimes you pull them away from something they're talented at to save their souls. It's about getting to heaven. I've come here to be sanctified. I get frustrated too. I know how to do all these things. I'm like, let me do it. Get out of the way. You novices are driving me crazy. You got to let them fail. Drive you crazy, but you got to let them fail. It's part of life. A good example is how God promoted Moses after he killed a man. Moses killed a man. What do? He promoted him. Okay, Moses, you're going to go back to Egypt and you're going to bring all the people out. He promoted Aaron to be high priest after having made the golden calf and basically fibbed about it. He was made high priest. Better to button up and keep following lest we undermine the work of God. And undermine it we will by spreading negativity that cannot be undone. Remember the story of St. Philip Neri? He was a great counselor. He's like the church's greatest spiritual director, just about. I mean, that's what he's considered, the great spiritual director. Like there's a great preacher, Saint Vincent. No one can beat him. He's the best. No one can beat him, basically. Read his life and you'll be, there's no preacher like Vincent. But anyway, you think to yourself, here's the great spiritual director, St. Philip Neri. Woman comes to him, she confesses gossiping, and he says, okay, go take a goose down pillow, go to one of the hills in Rome, open it up and let it fly in the wind, come back and talk to me. She does. He goes, now I want you to go pick up all those goose down feathers. But Father, that's impossible. Precisely. That's what your gossiping does. It is unfixable. It's blowing in the wind. Who can come back? It's too late. I speak from experience. I know I've done it many times. Now, St. John Climacus provides many profound thoughts on the virtue of obedience. Along the road we have taken, he says, there's only one false turning. We're back to Abba Dorotheus. What is it? You know it. That which they call self-direction, to follow one's own regime and to satisfy one's own will. Having second thoughts about a superior, having once entered the stadium of a holy living, he says, and obedience, we can no longer start criticizing the umpire, even if we should notice some faults in him. After all, he is human, and if we start making judgments, then our submissiveness earns no profit. Number 6, in my novitiate, when our novice master noticed one of us getting agitated about things, perhaps even complaining and murmuring, spreading negativity, unfortunately there was a lot of that, he would wisely pull the novice aside and ask, how's your prayer going? What's going on? Because he knew well that if we pray well, grace flows. Then we can handle the daily pinpricks and the difficulties of life. When we leave off prayer and our meditations aren't doing well, here I'm especially referring to the rosary and meditative prayer, mental prayer, we will become upset and perhaps complain and murmur and spread unfavorable reports. How is your prayer going? Recommend they take a retreat or get back to receiving supplies from the sacramental supply line of God and fight the battle inside. A corollary to this might be, how are things going in your house? Think of St. Teresa's interior castle. There's people in there, she would say, our intellect, our will, our memory, our imagination, which is the wild man in the castle, she said. And these are people inside. Are things well ordered in there? So many project their own issues upon others. It's a common problem of our fallen nature. Number 7, many times I've seen good parents deal with a difficult child by making excuses for them to help them calm down. They say things like, you are tired, or he's not feeling well today. They make excuses for the child. Let us respond by giving our superiors, our fellow sisters, the benefit of the doubt. Make excuses for them. Perhaps we could say something like, I'm not sure what they have in mind or what they're doing that for, but if you look around, they have a way of making things work out well. It'll be okay. Let's give them a chance. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're not feeling well. Maybe they're under a temptation that we can't understand. And we could also say, well, like us, they're still learning too. Who of us is perfect? And sometimes we have to learn what not to do from our superiors. Let's give them some room and space to work. So we respond by making excuses for the one being spoken of. And then finally, we're back to where we started. We respond by challenging them as to their preconceived ideas, false expectations. Are they looking for Eden? When I say back to where we started, I mean in this whole retreat, that flaming sword, wanting to enter Eden. The flaming sword says it's not possible what they're looking for. Is it really found anywhere this side of heaven? Is it easy to obtain? Once again, I turn to Dostoevsky, who put it so well. He really captured Aristotle versus Plato in one phrase. Active love is a fearful thing as compared to love and dreams. Active love is a harsh and fearful thing as compared to love and dreams. The Platonists think of love and dreams. The Aristotelian, harsh and active love. This is reality. Let's get to work. Let's make love work with God's grace. Dreamy love, oh, there's this ideal that never is realized and drives you crazy. So there's these expectations people have. They're false, they're preconceived. The ideal religious life, the ideal superior, the ideal chant, the ideal this, it doesn't work. We're always in tension because it doesn't work. It's not living up to the ideal. Now, I'm not against having a paradigm. I'm not against having the ideal, which is Christ and his mother and heaven. But let's get real. We're on the way. That's to be realized later. If you're looking for that here, you're going to be looking all your life and disappointed. Active love is a harsh, fearful thing as compared to love and dreams. And active love comes in the shape of a cross. So we should ask, is every religious really doing this? Is it available and commonly found in communities everywhere? Really? Come on. Chances are the person has an exaggerated expectation to which no one alive can live up to. Respond by asking, what were you expecting in coming here? Then get rid of the expectation and pray to accept the things as they are. Then something may actually start happening. Pray for acceptance. As the imitation of Christ put it for religious, why did you come here? Except to suffer and to die. The motto of Lady of Lourdes is, from Our Lady, I do not promise you happiness in this life, but in the next. There it is. I hope the answer for your coming here is simply this, because it's the way up. And others indeed are leading at much cost and risk to themselves. It is the way to bring glory to God and the salvation of souls. Let us all then fall in step and climb together and not work against each other, keeping in mind that humility can be simply defined as knowing your place and taking your place. What can go wrong? One thing. You're divided. Then it'll fail. We won't make it if we're divided. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.